Welcome back to the Dare to Dream podcast. My name is Gregory Russell Benedict, and this is a podcast about challenging you to embark on the adventure of your life. All right, friends, we are back. We are going to do a solo episode here. It's just going to be me. Vinny and I actually just tried to record an episode on Zoom, but there is a typhoon in Osaka right now, and the internet connection was terrible. Today, I'm going to be talking about something near and dear to my heart. It's a concept that I've written about a lot, but we're going to be talking about it in a new light because my coach shared a quote with me this week that rocked my world. The quote is by author Richard Bach, and it says, "We teach best what we most need to learn." Now, the last newsletter I wrote, the title of it was, "Please do not wait until you are ready." And what this means is please don't wait until you're ready to begin. Don't wait until you have all the answers to take that first step, to take that leap of faith, to jump into the unknown. Because when you take brave, courageous action, when you dare to dream, when you hurl yourself into the abyss without knowing what's going to happen next, that is when the magic happens. I have witnessed this in my own life, and yet I discovered this week on a coaching call with my coach that I am coming up against the unknown again and again and again, and I'm not taking that first step. I'm not taking that next step. I am not saying yes to things before I know how it's going to turn out. And there's a couple examples of this that I'll get to, but let's go way back. Let's go way back to the beginning of my journey. I tell people when my life got interesting, which was when I decided to quit my job in finance, hurl myself into the unknown, start a nonprofit with a stranger I met on the internet without knowing how it was going to turn out. For the first time in my life, this was a time where I did the calculations, I did the projections, I did the forecasting, and it didn't make sense. And yet, in the midst of that data telling me to do something to go left, I went right. And my life drastically changed. It drastically changed for the better. I met people I had always wanted to meet. Not that I knew who I was going to meet, but the types of people. Suddenly, opportunities appeared out of nowhere. Doors opened. I started manifesting the life that I had always dreamed about. And it's because I finally said yes. I finally took that step into the unknown without knowing what was going to happen next. And again, that was it. That was that first step. So in that instance, I wasn't ready. I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I acted. And magic happened. The nonprofit was amazing. It introduced me to coaching. I met all of these amazing friends and mentors and coaches, and it led me to where I am today. And where I am today is transitioning into coaching people around their biggest dream. I'm having these things called dream sessions where I spend an hour with people talking about their biggest dream. And when I come up against a dream that truly excites me, truly terrifies me because it's so grand, I am not having the courage to take that step. Or let's say I was not having the courage to take that step. Realizing that I was coming up against this limit again and again. And even though I talk about seeking discomfort, even though I talk about taking that leap of faith into the unknown, saying yes before you're ready, it was really revealing for me this week to realize that, yeah, I've done that before, but that was in the past. And now I'm struggling with it. So when I heard the quote, "We teach best what we most need to learn," on the same coaching call where my coach pointed out that I keep not saying yes and not stepping into the unknown because I don't feel ready, it was kind of a slap in the face, to be honest. And it's just such a beautiful lesson in that if you do something once, that's great, that's wonderful, but it's the repetitive, courageous action to step into situations that you don't know how it's going to turn out, but you do so because you know that the learning and the growth that happens within that space is going to be far greater than if you never did it at all. It's like Teddy Roosevelt talks about with his Man in the Arena speech. It's taking that action so that you're not left with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. At least you'll know one way or the other that you tried, that you gave it your all. So that is kind of the first piece of realizing that I've been talking the talk, and yes, I've been walking the walk. Like, let me give myself a little bit of credit because my inner critic is not allowing for any of it. I left my job in finance. I've been building a coaching business. I've been creating this podcast. I've been doing all of these things. And I am someone who's actively pursuing their dream. And yet, I still get in my own way all of the time, all of the time. So realizing that it's an opportunity for me to say yes more to the unknown, say no more to the known, and really live in the space of not knowing how it's going to turn out, not knowing who I'm going to work with, not knowing what my life will look like in a few years. That is what I'm saying yes to. The other thing I wanted to talk about today is something that Vinny shared when we were FaceTiming before this. We had to FaceTime because Zoom was so sketchy because of the storm. Even FaceTime was cutting out. And he was telling me about this idea that he came across recently. So in classic Dare to Dream fashion, don't know if we've done this before, but here is me quoting Vinny, quoting Gary V, who's the person who said this. And I'm paraphrasing because we couldn't find the exact quote, but Gary V was talking about this idea of wanting to prove something to your family, to your friends, to society. So many of us, especially in our 20s, we have this chip on our shoulder. We want to prove something to all of the parties I mentioned. And a lot of times we go about that by working really, really, really hard at something that doesn't fulfill us, at working really hard at something that is someone else's expectation of us. For me, that was finance. I wanted to be successful so bad that I was willing to work a job that was slowly killing my soul. And so Gary V talks about this, and he says, if you want to prove something to your friends and family, prove that you're in love with the process of figuring yourself out and exploring the unknown. That you're in love with that not knowing who you are and what you want, instead of seeing that as shameful or having guilt around it. And this comes up so often. I have conversations with people all the time, and they say that, oh, I would want to try something else, but I don't want to be that person who's always jumping from one job to the next, to the next. I don't want to have gaps in my resume. And it's so interesting when you really stop and think about it, because for me personally, I would rather change jobs, cities, every single year for the rest of my life if it meant that I was still searching, if it meant that ultimately I was going to get to the place that would fulfill me, that would bring me happiness. Wouldn't you want that too? Or would you want to settle and not do that because you don't want to rock the boat, because you don't want to become that guy or that girl who's always changing things? And so when people tell me about people, or they tell me about themselves, changing things up, trying a bunch of different things, taking on more than they can handle, getting overwhelmed, and then saying no to a lot of the things that were overwhelming them, I think that's amazing. I think that's discovery. I think that is the process of figuring out who you are and what you're meant to do on this earth. And so if you can own that, if you can own the process of not knowing who you are, but looking, but searching, if you can own the process of exploring the unknown, stumbling around in the dark, knowing nothing about where you're going or how it's going to turn out, that is what Gary V says you should be trying to prove. And that idea resonates with me so much. If you can own the not knowing, you are so powerful, because if we strip away everything, if we take an Alan Watts perspective of life and refer to his book, The Wisdom of Insecurity, nothing is certain. I guess the only thing that's certain is that we're going to die. Nothing else is guaranteed. Your health, how long you're going to live, what's going to happen to your loved ones. And there's this wisdom in knowing that there is no certainty, and that we don't need to grasp for that certainty. It's actually the grasping for certainty, for not clarity, but for assurance, that leads to a lot of the anxiety. Because if you're trying to find a concrete foundation to stand on in a world that's ever changing, things are always moving, that's nearly impossible. So I'm saying a lot here. If I were to summarize the past few weeks of just this wild growth journey I've been on with my coach and my coaching, and transitioning from coaching anyone and everyone to coaching people around their biggest dreams, it would be that as someone who prides themselves on talking the talk and walking the walk, I'm realizing that there is room for improvement. There's room for growth. And that just because I said yes and stepped into the unknown once doesn't mean that I have a free pass for the rest of life. It's a muscle that will atrophy if I don't keep strengthening it, going to the gym of life, of saying yes to things that scare me. And man, we'll end where we started with Richard Bach saying, "We teach best what we most need to learn." And I think the wisdom behind that is that what we most need to learn, a lot of times we know what it is. It's the things that excite us, it's the things we're talking about. And it's also a bit of projection, I think. Especially for me, I always find that the thing I'm writing about in my newsletter, it's like I'm writing to myself. I'm writing about not waiting until you're ready to start. I'm writing about living a story worth telling. I'm talking about all of these things, yes, to motivate others, yes, to inspire others, but I really feel like it's always a reminder to myself to do the things that I say I want to do. And it's this constant realignment with what I say I'm about and how I act, and just this dance between the two. And I think that's when, at least I'll point to times in my own life, the happiest I've ever been is when what I say I'm going to do and what I do are in alignment. And I feel aligned within of knowing that my word is true and good, and I'm trying my best. That's where we're going to leave it for today. A rambling solo episode from yours truly, because the gods kept Vinny and I apart today. What a beautiful journey this is. We were just talking about how we don't know what this podcast is going to turn into. We don't know. We have absolutely no idea the 10-year plan, the vision, the strategy. We have ideas of it, but I can almost guarantee that in the end, it will look nothing like we are imagining. So we're just going to keep saying yes. We're just going to keep doing the work, showing up, having these conversations, sharing authentically and vulnerably, because that's really all you can do at the end of the day. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today. I appreciate you all so much. We love you guys.